Hello, and welcome to episode 16 of the pharmaphorum podcast. My name's Dominic Tyre, and I'm pharmaphorum's creative and editorial director. For this episode, I met Pfizer's Dr. Olivia Ashman in London to talk about the UK cancer landscape. As the pharma company's UK oncology medical director, it's certainly something about which she knows a thing or two, and it provided an opportunity to dig into the impact of the NHS long-term plan in cancer and look at what pressure points the UK Health Service currently faces. We also discussed some of the challenges for patient access to medicines in the UK, with a focus on new, innovative treatments and whether the new VPAS scheme will improve the situation. We then finished up with a look at some of Pfizer's collaborative work in oncology in the UK. You can find more details of this episode, including a download link for the podcast and information about other instalments in the series at pharmaphorum.com/podcast. The pharmaphorum podcast is also available on iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher and SoundCloud, where you can find and subscribe to it by searching for pharmaphorum. Olivia, welcome to the pharmaphorum podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Perhaps we could start off with I want you to say a few words to introduce yourself to the listeners.
So, yes, my name's Dr. Olivia Ashman. I'm the UK Oncology Medical Director at Pfizer Limited.
And we're, of course, given your job title, we're here to talk around the UK cancer landscape today. And some of the issues around patient access to medicines within the UK. I wonder to start off with, how would you characterise the UK cancer landscape?
Well, cancer in the UK is increasing in prevalence, and currently there are 2.5 million people living with cancer in the UK today. It is increasing, and 1 in 2 of us within our lifetimes will be diagnosed with cancer. So, there are some concerning statistics out there. However, thanks to rapid advances in both science and technology, increasingly innovative medicines are being discovered and developed. And as a result, more people than ever now are living with their cancer and surviving beyond cancer. And for Pfizer, oncology is a key focus of research and development because we recognise that continued innovation is really essential as there's considerable unmet need, particularly in rarer and harder to treat cancers.
And in terms of what you see with your work with the NHS, what sort of pressure points do you see the health service in the UK being under with respect to cancer at the moment?
Well, I worked as a doctor in the NHS for 12 years, and most of my team is made of doctors and pharmacists from the NHS, so we all understand the ecosystem, very, very deeply. I would say that the key areas of pressure point that spring to my mind are around those of capacity and resource issues. Currently, there are 100,000 full-time vacancies, including 40,000 nursing vacancies in the NHS, and that puts huge amounts of pressure on staff. People are surviving with their cancer for longer, which is a great thing, but this places more pressure on oncology clinics, which are commonly running way above capacity. And in addition, as people are living longer, they are getting more comorbidities, and therefore treating them is becoming increasingly complex. We also recognise that as innovative technologies come through, it does place additional demands on people, such as having to change existing care pathways. But with these new innovations, you can also create more headroom in the NHS, which is why we try and be part of the solution and why we have delivered 23 partnerships with the NHS to really try and focus and help with capacity issues and improve service delivery and also the patient's experience.
Mm-hmm. And looking at the landscape from an industry perspective, what sort of things are challenging pharmaceutical companies such as Pfizer?
I think that the main challenge is ensuring that people with cancer are able to access our medicines. It still continues to be one of our biggest challenges. The uptake of cancer medicines in the UK is slower than countries such as France, Germany, Italy and Spain. And although more people are surviving with their disease, the cancer survival in the UK is still lagging behind other economically comparable countries. And as a country, the UK invests less in its healthcare than the EU average.
And just sticking with that point then, so I wonder if you can tell me a little bit more then around what's the current state of patient access to new innovative cancer drugs in the UK?
Well, the UK, as I might have mentioned, has a slower uptake of new cancer medicines compared to other EU countries, and the UK is among the 10 worst countries for cancer survival. A recent report last year by the ICR, the Institute of Cancer Research, found that highly innovative cancer medicines were less likely to have been approved in the NHS by NICE than less innovative medicines. However, we do recognise that NICE have a really difficult job to do. They have a finite amount of resource, and they're trying to ensure the sustainability of our healthcare system. We want this too, and we also want people in the UK with cancer to be able to benefit from breakthrough medicines. So the NICE Methods Review will offer a perfect opportunity to keep up with the exciting new era of the scientific and the medical advances, and to consider new ways of assessing value. And we share a common goal, which is to improve patient outcomes, and we want to work with them to really try and achieve the best possible results for patients.
And looking at at how new innovations are appraised, it must be a particularly challenging time for health technology appraisal bodies such as NICE within cancer. You have such a wave of new developments. It must be for pharmaceutical companies a really exciting time for those involved within the science, thinking about sort of personalised medicine and immuno-oncology and some of the innovations that are coming through. But when you look at sort of patient access to new and innovative cancer drugs, perhaps like such as some of the ones I've mentioned there, how well do you think that is going at the moment? What's the current state of patient access to innovative cancer drugs?
Well, as you say, it's a very exciting time. It's great for people like me who joined Pfizer because we wanted to be able to improve, many more patients' lives and have a greater impact. There are innovative medicines coming through. The Institute of Cancer Research report at the end of last year did, however, flag that highly innovative medicines are less likely to approve for use by the NHS by NICE than less innovative medicines. And I think a lot more medicines are coming through as combinations, and also coming through for rarer groups of patients. You mentioned personalised medicines. That's a very exciting development. It means that you are now able to tailor a medicine to a particular individual's genetic or environmental or lifestyle factors, and really be able to give them a medicine designed for their particular cancer and their particular genetic driver. So it is, really exciting, but it does make it harder as you get smaller and smaller cohorts and groups of data to be able to assess these medicines and to be able to understand that, how are they going to work in the real world, and how are they going to work in the longer term, and because you're having smaller data sets coming through. So it is a challenging conundrum for reimbursement bodies, and it's one that we're really working with them to try and help find solutions and to support them with this. And we really welcome the review of the methods that's coming later this year, and the fact that they're engaging industry and the wider body to really try and work and see how they can ensure that the system is able to appraise and recognise the new advances in the science.
And I'm sure there are no easy answers to the next question. Maybe some answers at this stage, maybe not. But I'm just thinking around the types of evidence that NICE would traditionally require that's maybe not yet available or going to be much harder to come by but certainly for rarer cancers, just by nature of the patient populations involved within them, but maybe also for the combination therapies, in thinking about how many more clinical trials might be needed. How's Pfizer approaching that side of things in terms of trying to help bodies like NICE provide the right data to them, or the kind of data that they need to be able to make a decision? Is that where real world evidence comes in, or might come in, or are there other things that Pfizer's doing?
I think in terms of making sure that patients are able to access medicines as quickly as possible, appraisals are being brought forward so that there is a final decision around CHMP time. And I think, as you've pointed out, this can create some difficulties trying to appraise a medicine earlier in its cycle, because you might not have all the information at that time point. And you may not know whether in the longer term it's going to have the effect that you want. Often, when you're bringing it forward, you may not have all the data you'd like overall survival. And it's really trying to get strike a balance where patients can get access to medicines quickly, and you've also got a solid evidence base for NICE to be able to use at the time they're making that decision. I think things like the CDF, which helps companies be able to have a period of time when they can collect more data and more evidence is really a good thing, and we're very supportive of that. And I think real-world evidence is also, very key. And, there's a lot of discussion around outcome-based products. And we are doing, within our oncology team, lots of real-world data studies, looking at evidence of medicines and trying to do these ahead of time, so that by the time we come to our NICE submission, we can remove some of the uncertainty for them.
Okay. And think about just the sort of real-world evidence studies that you're currently running. Are you able to tell me a little bit around some of the advantages of that approach, or some of the learnings, if that's the right word, that you're uncovering from following that path?
Well, I think there's several advantages of real-world data, which is that you are looking at seeing how the drug actually has an impact in the real world in your normal population. In a randomized control trial, it's a very strict confines of a clinical trial. There's very strict eligibility criteria, inclusion criteria. Sometimes people argue that patients could be receiving a more intensive care or followed up more frequently, and they tend to be at sort of specialist centres when there's lots of expertise in that particular area. And so trying to translate and ensure that in the real world they have that same output is important. And obviously looking at sequencing, people have often have medicines before and medicines after. So what you want to know is really how your medicine's going to help you decide, and more importantly, the clinicians and the patients decide what is the right medicine for the right patient at the right time. So real-world data is fundamental in doing that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. So, and looking now at I suppose, the much bigger picture and some of the agreements and plans that have been put into place relatively recently. I'm thinking first and foremost of the NHS long-term plan, and how it might improve the cancer landscape. We had there's a little bit of information in it around maybe a desire for greater partnerships, some earlier diagnosis points. How do you think that the plan's going to improve cancer in the UK?
Well, I think we're really excited by the long-term plan, in the fact that cancer is really a key focus and is an emphasis for the NHS.
It's a general plan for the whole NHS.
It's a general plan for the whole NHS.
A cancer-specific one, of course.
Yes,
isn't it?
But cancer features heavily. And like you say, there's a lot of focus on earlier detection and prevention, which is fantastic, because obviously that will save patients' lives. But it's also important that treatment also receives focus, because sadly it's not always possible to prevent cancer or to diagnose it at an early stage. I think there's a number of things that personally excite me, in the fact that they want to work more collaboratively with the NHS, as you mentioned. It's sort of termed from a nice do to a must do in the recent paper from the NHS and the ABPI. And I think that's something that we strongly also feel, that together we can do so much better for patients than working in silos. And we really want to increase that as well. It's no longer the transactional relationships of the past. I think the fact that you also have genomic testing available for all patients with cancer is brilliant. This is a first time in the world that you'll get systemically offered whole genome sequencing to cancer patients. And this means that you can have the increased possibility of precision medicine, and you can also help with clinical trial efficiencies by stratifying patients. So you are just getting the patients who have the genetic drivers that your medicine is targeting. I also think we touched upon it earlier, the research and development side of things, but the increased investment in real-world testing that the NHS also wants to do will really help in our understanding of disease and the impact that medicines have in the real world. And it's, cancer is a moving target, so data really is key to understanding what happens, particularly once you put the medicines out there with other medicines and trying to work out what order medicines should be used for a patient to give the best possible outcome. So I think there's lots of things in the NHS long-term plan that really resonate with Pfizer, people at Pfizer, and sort of very much aligned with the kind of path that we're on to try and improve patients' lives.
Mm-hmm. And staying with NHS England for a moment, so we heard also recently about its plans to start to prioritise tumour-agnostic drugs. How do you think that's going to change things?
Well, we're very supportive of this approach. I think having a tumour-agnostic drug for research for a long time, we've moved away from sort of the organ approach system. And with tumour-agnostic drugs, it doesn't matter where the cancer developed in the body or the tissue type it developed. You have a medicine that targets a particular molecular alteration, and that's the indication for the medicine. I think being able to expedite innovative medicines, through the process quickly, it could be an exemplar for the ACC. And I think that this is something that we definitely welcome, and I'd like to see more of, because it will benefit patients such as rarer paediatric cancers and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And moving on to a slightly more industry-focused topic, we had, I think towards the end of last year, the new industry pricing scheme signed, VPAS. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that scheme, but particularly how it could improve patient access.
Well, with the VPAS, the Voluntary Pricing and Access Scheme, we're supportive of it. We really applaud the commitment to engage with industry and also patients and the clinical community. And I think there are two main areas where it's likely to improve patient access. Firstly is in the review of the NICE's methods for technology appraisals, and second is in the development of the NHSE commercial framework. I think that will enable a more flexible approach to commercial access arrangements and will be really important in going forwards and getting new medicines to patients. I think there are also a few other aspects of it, such as the increase in NICE appraisals, so more medicines will be appraised by NICE, and also any significant indication changes. It will also accelerate the appraisal of non-cancer medicines. So for NHS patients at large, they may receive access to medicines quicker, up to 6 months quicker in some cases. And I think another key aspect is around measuring innovation uptake. This is quite key in improving uptake and the use of clinically and cost-effective medicines. And we know that there is quite sort of a difference across the country in the speed of uptake of medicines. And lastly, the better horizon scanning and more engagement in that process will help flag innovative medicines coming through the system earlier and earlier. So I think all of these things combined could really go towards improving the speed in which medicines reach patients.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'd like to focus now, if we may, on some of Pfizer's collaborative work. So how you're working with the NHS perhaps, but also the wider healthcare sector. I mean, if we just start off with a basic look at this, what in your opinion are appropriate ways, I suppose, for pharmaceutical companies to collaborate with healthcare stakeholders? It's obviously an area with some potential minefields, I think it would be fair to say, but what are appropriate ways for the industry to work with stakeholders to improve the lives of patients with cancer?
Well, first and foremost, in any collaboration, where the focus is trying to improve the lives of people with cancer, I think, these are the people that need to be involved. I remember hearing a patient once saying, no decision about me without me, and I think this is very true. We touched upon earlier the recent report from the ABPI and the NHS Confederation saying that this needs to be scaled up, and there are several wins from collaborating. You can help with the sustainability of the NHS. It helps industry to demonstrate evidence of impact. And most importantly, patients will really gain from the pooling of expertise and of resources between industry and the NHS. In terms of appropriate ways to collaborate, we have a very robust framework within industry, which is guides us very clearly on how to appropriately engage. And this is overseen by the ABPI Code of Practice. And the whole purpose of this is to ensure that companies operate in a responsible, ethical and professional manner, and there's transparency in all the collaboration. So I think collaborations are definitely the way forward. I think everybody benefits from them, but it's important that we make sure that this system is governed and that there's a framework already in place for that.
Mm-hmm. So collaboration is important to help improve the lives of patients with cancer. What sort of things is Pfizer doing then at the moment in the UK in terms of these sorts of collaborations?
Well, in the UK, in Pfizer Oncology, we're really lucky to have a dedicated team, which is called the Patient Experience Team, who's very much focused on improving the lives of people with cancer and their experience and cancer care within the NHS. And they've done 23 partnerships with the NHS now around this. And they don't have a cookie cutter model. What they do is they go into a hospital, they first of all help them understand what the particular issue is, then they look at the root cause, the demand in the pathway, any capacity issues, and then they work out what would be a great outcome for patients and also for the staff. And they do lots of questionnaires and gain insights. And they're very experienced. They use lots of different tools to do this. Just a couple of examples on how we've been working with the NHS. One is around artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. Artificial intelligence and machine learning is increasing hugely. I think there's a lot of potential for its use in the healthcare system. I was at a talk, an innovative forum talk in Cambridge just the last couple of days, and they said that we've now reached the level of a mouse's brain, and by 2023, I think it is, we'll reach the level of a human brain, and by 2045, it will be the brain capacity of all humans across the globe. So, there's so many different places you can use AI and machine learning in the NHS, and we really want to be involved in this future direction of the NHS. And the Velindre Cancer Centre were also trying to look at ways of improving the way they operate and support their patients. So what we did is we worked with them and IBM Watson and with patient representatives to create an AI platform called Rita, which is a platform that can answer questions that patients might have. And these questions could be ranging from logistical questions, such as, where can I park in the hospital, when are the visiting hours on the ward, to questions more specific about their treatment. So they may have questions like, I'm having chemotherapy on Wednesday and I'm going to a wedding on Saturday. Is it okay to drink a glass of wine? And these questions, anyone who's ever been a patient will realise that they come up, 24/7 in the middle of the night, not necessarily in the consultation period and room. And to be able to get answers from these questions is really, really important to patients. And sometimes, may not recall when they see the doctor or nurse, or they may not want to bother them with what they would feel is maybe a silly question. But having Rita means that they can, at any time that the question pops into their minds, they can ask it and find an answer. And it also has the added bonus of freeing up time for the staff. So clinical nurse specialists can spend about 2 hours answering very frequently asked questions. And for them to be able to have Rita to support that, and it frees them up to be able to support patients with maybe more complex needs. So it's beneficial to all. Other collaborations have also been, it's not just about the treatment, the patient support, but it's about prevention as well. And we have done a project in Manchester with the NHS England, which is trying to reduce smoking rates. And this is based on a project done in Canada, in Ottawa. And it's the aim is to decrease smoking rates by a third by 2020. And so Pfizer's role is really in the training and in the project management of the rollout of this. And it's based in secondary care setting within Shaw Hospital. And they've trained staff from porters up to professors on how to have conversations with patients about their smoking. And then they've looked at healthcare professionals and trained them up on the different methods of how to give up smoking. And later in the year, we're going to get sort of the report with the outcomes of this. So looking at rates of smoking cessation, rates of inpatient stay, rates of readmission, rates of cardiovascular events, and to see the impact that this program has had. So we're involved in sort of the whole care pathway from prevention to treatment and so forth. So these are just some examples I want to share.
It certainly sounds like the report, when it's available, will make for some fascinating reading to see how those initiatives that work can change healthcare and change patients' lives, really. Just moving back to Rita for a second. Is that an online application? How do patients access it? Is it something that they can find via their mobile, or? So
at the moment it's still in the phase. So they've got the prototype and they've designed it, and they're now building it out. So they have their set of questions, and they're now working with various external bodies that support patients to basically increase dramatically the number of questions, because they've got I think 100 commonly asked questions from one group. They're working with a national group that support patients in furthering that more. And I think, the Welsh government and people like that have been interested, and I think they're going to maybe take it out. At the moment it's affecting supporting lung cancer and breast cancer patients, but there's potential for it to sort of even have a wider remit. But it's I'm not sure. I think it's going live later this year, I think, but I'd have to check with the project team, which is the patient experience team.
Okay, sure. Well, I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about it when it's released into the wild and goes live. So, well, we've got quite a lot of ground already. So, finally, what I wanted to find out from you was what your hopes are for the future then in cancer treatment in the UK.
My hope is that we continue to discover more and more innovative treatments, and that we basically change cancer from being an illness to something that's a long-term condition, where people will have a normal life expectancy, where they can live a normal quality of life, and they can live that life outside of the hospital. Mm-hmm. That's my hope. Okay.
Olivia, thank you very much for joining me on the pharmaphorum podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
And that brings to an end episode 16 of the pharmaphorum podcast, and my conversation with Pfizer's Dr. Olivia Hashman about the UK cancer landscape. You can find more details of this episode, including a download link for the podcast and information about other instalments in the series at pharmaphorum.com/podcast. The podcast is also available on iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher and SoundCloud, where you can find and subscribe to it by searching for pharmaphorum. Finally, don't forget to visit our website to sign up for daily or weekly email pharmaceutical news and analysis bulletins. And also follow us on Twitter, where we are at pharmaphorum.